This section heading is called Setting Up the Master. So now what we're going to do in this section is we're going to provision our master node. And the way that we're going to do it is via the client. So anytime you're doing any sort of installation or configuration on any of these nodes within the cluster, you're going to do so from here. So the first thing that I'm having you do within the lab is just to kind of get a sense of how things are networked. So if we open up a terminal and we issue ifconfig, what we're going to see within here is we can see the client's IP address, and then we can also determine whether or not these other nodes within the cluster are in the same network. Now, because over here we've got the first 24 bits lit up within our subnet mask, that tells us that those nodes are. Remember, your subnet mask is used to differentiate between the network portion and the host portion of an IP address. So now when managing these devices, the way that it's essentially going to connect to them is not the IP address. It's going to use the device's name. So the next thing I'm having you do is to take a look at your host file. So your host file is looked to for an IP to name mapping before seeking the answer from a DNS server. So now when we're doing this remote management, we're going to be using SSH. So we're going to type SSH to support @master, and we're going to provision the master node once we establish an SSH session. So when we go to connect, once again, we're going to be presented with host key checking. And this is just to verify that we're connecting to the correct SSH server. So by confirming the hash of the public key by essentially saying yes over here, then we're confirming the identity of that server that we're connecting to. So now we're going to authenticate in order to complete the action of establishing an SSH session. And now we're on the master node. So in this lab environment, the way that we're going to be essentially provisioning things is we're going to be running bash scripts. So as I said in a previous lab, this environment isn't set up for persistence. So the way that we're going to make it persistent is we're going to be running essentially these setup scripts. So now this setup script is called lab3. So we're just going to type lab3 and press enter, and then authenticate. So once that script completes, you're going to be returned to a prompt. Now what we actually provisioned by running that script is single node Hadoop. What we're going to be doing in later sections of this lab is we're going to migrate from single node to a multi-node setup. So now we made a change to our bashrc file, and in order to get those changes read, we're going to execute source bashrc.